The Empire had conquered 17 star systems. They had crushed civilizations that mastered quantum travel. They had defeated species that lived for thousands of years. Their warships blocked out stars, and their soldiers numbered in the billions. When their scouts discovered Earth, a small blue planet spinning around an average yellow sun, they laughed at what they found. Humans, soft creatures made of water and weak bones. They fought among themselves over invisible lines drawn on maps. They destroyed their own planet with pollution while arguing about whether it was really happening. Their weapons were primitive. They were embarrassingly short. The average human lived less than 80 years, a blink of an eye compared to the 500-year of a warrior. High Commander stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, and watched the blue planet grow larger on his viewing screen. Around him, 300 warships waited for his command. Behind those ships, transport vessels carried 2 million ground soldiers ready to claim this world for the Empire. This would be the easiest victory in history. Intelligence reports showed that humans had no energy shields, no faster-than-light travel, no planetary defense systems worth mentioning. Their most powerful weapons could barely scratch the paint on a cruiser. "This conquest will take 7 days at most," announced to his officers. "We will add their world to our empire and use their population as a labor force. They are weak, but they have capable hands. They will serve us well in the mining colonies." His officers nodded in agreement. Some of them yawned. This mission felt more like a vacation than a conquest. They had destroyed civilizations with technology far beyond these humans. What could these primitive creatures possibly do against the might of the Empire? The first wave of attack ships descended through Earth's atmosphere on a cool morning in September. They targeted the major cities first: New York, London, Beijing, Moscow, Tokyo. The plan was simple and familiar: destroy the centers of power and the rest of the population would surrender within hours. It had worked on every planet they had ever conquered. Fear was the most reliable weapon in the galaxy. The attack ships opened fire on New York City. Buildings crumbled. Bridges fell into rivers. Millions of humans ran screaming through the streets as fire rained from the sky. From orbit, watched with satisfaction as his forces swept across the human world. Everything was going according to plan. Then something unexpected happened. The humans did not surrender. They did not beg for mercy. They did not fall to their knees and offer their submission. Instead, they fought back. In the burning streets of New York, a group of firefighters pulled survivors from collapsed buildings while bullets flew overhead. Police officers with small handguns charged at soldiers, knowing they would die, buying time for civilians to escape. Ordinary people picked up debris and threw it at the invaders. An old woman hit a warrior with a frying pan before he cut her down. She died smiling because her had escaped through a back door while she distracted the enemy. Received his first troubling report 3 hours into the invasion. His ground forces had taken New York, but the casualties were higher than expected. Not dangerously high, but surprising. These humans should have been easy prey. Instead, they were fighting with everything they had. Some of them were fighting with their bare hands. "Increase the attack intensity," ordered. "Show them the full power of the Empire. They will learn fear." But the humans did not learn fear. Instead, they learned anger. Within 24 hours, every military force on Earth had united against a common enemy. Countries that had been enemies for centuries now shared soldiers and supplies. Scientists who had competed for funding now worked together in secret underground laboratories. Factories that had built cars and toys now built weapons. Every human who could hold a weapon picked one up. Even children carried messages between resistant cells because the invaders did not consider them threats. They had superior technology, but humans had something else. They had billions of people who were absolutely, completely, terrifyingly angry. And they had something they had never encountered before. Humans were creative when they were desperate. A group of engineers in Germany figured out that shields had a specific frequency. They built devices that could disrupt those shields using parts from old radios and kitchen appliances. Within days, the resistance was manufacturing thousands of these devices in hidden workshops. Suddenly, soldiers were no longer invincible. A teenager in Japan discovered that communication systems were vulnerable to a specific type of interference. She spread this information across the internet before the invaders shut it down. Human hackers began disrupting communications, turning coordinated attacks into confused disasters. A farmer in Brazil noticed that soldiers always attacked at the same time each day. They were creatures of strict routine. He organized an ambush that killed 50 enemy soldiers using nothing but farming equipment and explosive fertilizer. His tactics spread across the globe. Soon, every farmer, every factory worker, every grandmother with a kitchen full of chemicals was a potential threat to the invaders. Received the casualty reports with growing disbelief. His forces had conquered planets defended by energy weapons and force fields. They had defeated species that could see the future. But these humans, these fragile, short-lived, supposedly primitive creatures, were bleeding his army dry. "They should have surrendered by now," he said to his second-in-command. "Why do they keep fighting? They cannot win. They must know they cannot win." His second-in-command shook his head. "I do not understand them either, Commander. We destroyed their capital cities. We killed millions of them. By every rule of war, they should have given up, but they seem to grow stronger the more we hurt them." This was something they had never encountered. Every species they had conquered before had broken when enough pressure was applied. Kill enough of their leaders and the rest would submit. Destroy enough of their cities and they would beg for terms. But humans were different. Each death seemed to make the survivors more determined. Each destroyed city seemed to create 10 new resistant cells. 2 months into the invasion, controlled all of Earth's major cities, but he controlled nothing else. His soldiers could not patrol the countryside without being attacked. Supply convoys were ambushed constantly. Even the occupied cities were dangerous. Bombs exploded in buildings where officers slept. Poison appeared in their food. Soldiers disappeared during night patrols and were found days later, killed in ways that shocked even hardened warriors. The humans had turned fear against the invaders. Soldiers who had conquered 17 star systems now looked over their shoulders constantly. They flinched at shadows. They reported nightmares to their medical officers. These small, weak, short-lived creatures had gotten inside their heads. Requested reinforcements from the Empire. He received a sharp reply. The Empire did not send reinforcements to conquer primitive planets. He was expected to complete this mission with the resources he had. Failure was not acceptable. But failure was exactly what was happening. Humans were learning. Every day they understood technology a little better. They reverse-engineered captured weapons. They studied enemy communications. They found weaknesses that even they did not know existed. A physics professor in Russia discovered that ships generated a specific energy signature before jumping to hyperspace. She developed an early warning system that spread across what remained of human networks. Now, the humans could predict where attacks would come before they arrived. 3 months after the invasion began, human forces launched their first coordinated counterattack. They struck 12 locations simultaneously, using captured weapons and jury-rigged human technology. They destroyed 200 enemy aircraft in a single night. They rescued thousands of prisoners from a detention facility. They broadcast a message to the entire world that was simple and clear. We are not finished. We will never be finished. We will fight until every last invader is gone from our world. Watched this message from the bridge of his flagship and felt something he had not felt in 300 years of service to the Empire. He felt uncertain. He felt worried. He felt, for the first time in his long life, the cold grip of fear. These creatures lived for less than a century, but they fought as if they had nothing to lose. Every human seemed ready to die if it meant hurting the invaders. Parents attacked soldiers to protect children. Children attacked soldiers to avenge parents. The old protected the young. The strong carried the weak. They were like a single organism made of billions of furious cells, each one willing to sacrifice itself for the survival of the whole. 6 months after the invasion began, made a decision that shook the empire to its core. He ordered a retreat. His fleet limped away from Earth, leaving behind the burned wreckage of half his ships. He left behind 700,000 dead soldiers. He left behind the shattered myth of invincibility. He returned to face judgment from the Emperor. But the humans did not forget. They rebuilt their world and they remembered. They studied the captured technology. They improved it. They made it their own. And they began looking at the stars with new eyes. 100 years later, human ships appeared in space. They were not primitive anymore. They had learned from the invasion. They had spent a century preparing. Their technology now matched the best in the galaxy, and their numbers were vast. Humans bred fast and lived short lives, but those short lives burned with intensity that longer-lived species could not match. Every generation was hungry to prove itself. Every generation remembered the invasion and carried that memory like fuel for an endless fire. The Empire faced a force they had created through their own arrogance. They had come to Earth looking for easy slaves and found stubborn survivors instead. They had tried to break the human spirit and only made it stronger. Now, that spirit was coming for them with warships that darkened the skies of their own. High Commander had died of old age decades before, but his failure lived on in memory. He had warned them. In his final reports before his death, he had tried to explain what he had learned about humans. Do not underestimate them, he had written. Do not fight them unless you are prepared to fight forever. They do not surrender. They do not forget. They do not stop. They had ignored his warnings. They had blamed him for the failed invasion. They had called him weak and stripped him of his honors. Now, as human ships surrounded their planets, they finally understood what he had tried to tell them. Regret is a bitter drink, and the Empire drank deeply. They had attacked a world that seemed easy to conquer and woken something that would never sleep again. Humanity remembered every city that had burned. They remembered every child who had lost a parent. They remembered every desperate last stand and every hopeless charge against impossible odds. They remembered, and they had come to collect a debt that had been growing interest for 100 years. The universe watched as humans did what had seemed impossible. They brought the mighty to their knees, not through greater numbers or superior technology, but through sheer, endless, unbreakable will. The species that had been dismissed as weak, fragile, and primitive became the most feared force in the galaxy. Other civilizations learned the lesson that they had learned too late. Humans were dangerous not because of their technology or their strength. They were dangerous because they simply refused to give up. They could be knocked down, but they always stood up again. They could be hurt, but pain only made them angry. They could be killed, but others would take their place. There was no way to defeat creatures who considered death just another reason to keep fighting. Earth remembered the invasion for thousands of years afterward. It became the defining story of human civilization. The day the stars attacked and humanity punched back. The day when every old argument and ancient grudge vanished in the face of a common enemy. The day when humanity discovered exactly what it was capable of when survival was at stake. And somewhere in the great archives of galactic history, a simple warning was added to the entry for Earth. Avoid at all costs. They never stop fighting. They never forget. And they always come for their revenge.